Imagine stepping right outside your front door for a second. Picture that thick smog hanging in the air on a hot summer day, or the relentless roar of traffic noise, or, just the uncollected trash piling up on the corner. It's a reality that so many of us literally face every single day. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the massive and frankly often overwhelming topic of environmental degradation. But hey, we aren't just going to rattle off random facts here. We're going to map this whole thing out clearly, exploring exactly how the pollution right in front of our noses connects to the grander planetary crisis. All right, let's quickly look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with the scales of pollution, then look locally at our cities in crisis. From there, we'll expand out to regional rivers and farmlands, zoom all the way out to the global planetary crisis, explore how this forms one giant interconnected web, and finally look at forging a sustainable future.
So, first up, the scales of pollution.
To kick things off, we really just have to acknowledge a simple truth. Environmental degradation can feel overwhelmingly broad. I mean, when we turn on the news, the sheer variety of ecological issues is enough to make anyone's head spin. If you've ever felt like you need a literal spreadsheet just to keep track of what you're supposed to throw in which recycling bin, believe me, you are not alone. We're dealing with an incredible diversity of waste every single day. We're not just talking about your standard solid and liquid waste either. We have to simultaneously manage biomedical waste, hazardous industrial byproducts, and all that electronic waste from the outdated smartphones and chargers we toss out. It is a massive multi-front battle. To make sense of all this chaos without getting totally lost in the weeds, we're going to use a camera lens metaphor. Think of our exploration in 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is a tight macro shot focused directly on our local urban centers. Step 2 widens the lens a bit to capture regional ecosystems. And step 3, that uses a super wide-angle lens to take in the entire global climate. This step-by-step approach is really going to help us understand exactly how air, water, soil, and noise pollution function at each specific scale. Which brings us to part 2, local, our cities in crisis. At the local scale, environmental degradation isn't some abstract, distant theory. No, it's immediate. It is tangible. It's the smog we breathe in on our morning commute. It's the headache of managing municipal solid waste and untreated sewage. It's even the literal physical health burden caused by that endless traffic and construction noise. This is the pollution we experience viscerally every single time we step outside in a city. And remember those specific types of waste we just listed? The biomedical and electronic waste? Well, when they're improperly managed, they don't just magically disappear. They often end up dumped right in our local communities. This creates these highly concentrated, incredibly dangerous toxic hotspots right in our own backyards, posing severe, immediate risks to local public health. Let's expand our view a bit for part 3. Regional, rivers and farmlands. When we zoom out to the regional scale, we can clearly map how specific human activities degrade vital landscapes. For instance, industrial effluents and agricultural runoff are pouring into and heavily polluting famous life-sustaining waterways like the Ganga and Yamuna rivers. We're also seeing how the heavy overuse of fertilizers and pesticides degrades our farmlands, which directly threatens our food security. And finally, hazardous waste from regional industries? It doesn't just stay put. It spreads out to impact entire surrounding ecosystems. Now, let's look at the big picture in part 4, global, the planetary crisis. Taking our camera lens all the way out to the stratosphere, we confront the massive, overarching reality of our global climate crisis. Now, at this scale, we've got to start with a clear definition of anthropogenic emissions. This is absolutely crucial. These are the greenhouse gases and pollutants released into the atmosphere as a direct result of human activities. Our source material makes this crystal clear. These human-driven factors are the primary engine dominating the planetary crisis. They're the things causing rising global temperatures and driving the melting of glaciers worldwide. But here's the thing. At this global scale, climate change is not just some scientific or ecological issue. It is a profound human crisis. The planetary crisis triggers devastating socioeconomic fallout. We are talking about severe extreme weather events, the forced displacement of entire populations, severe global food insecurity, and rapidly escalating health risks. The environmental literally becomes intensely personal and economic. And as you might guess, at this macro level, the political dimensions become incredibly complex. There are intense, ongoing international debates over equity and responsibility, particularly between developed and developing nations. The core of this geopolitical discussion really centers around who is responsible for historical emissions and who should bear the biggest burden of mitigating the crisis moving forward. It's a highly sensitive geopolitical balancing act for sure. But before we move forward in this explainer, I want us to just hit pause for a second and reflect on everything we've mapped out so far. We've looked at local smog, regional river pollution, and the massive global climate crisis. But are these scales actually separate? Like, does the local stay local and the global stay global?
Let's find out in Part 5. The Interconnected Web.
Answering that question leads us to honestly the most critical realization of our entire spatial journey today. Environmental degradation is deeply, deeply interconnected. All that local urban waste, the smog from city traffic, the regional agricultural runoff degrading the soil, none of it exists in a vacuum. The air, water, soil, and waste pollution we experience locally and regionally actively combine. They feed directly upward into the atmosphere, exacerbating and accelerating the global climate crisis. But wait, it goes both ways. The connection doesn't just flow upward, it's a continuous, powerful feedback loop. The global planetary crisis, driven by those rising temperatures and extreme weather events, trickles right back down. It reshapes local economies, it disrupts regional societies, and it destabilizes geopolitics across the globe. Essentially, the global crisis fundamentally alters the day-to-day reality of our local streets and regional farms.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 6, Forging a Sustainable Future.
Now, I know recognizing this tightly knit, interconnected web can feel a bit daunting, but honestly, it's actually empowering. Why? Because understanding the system is the very first step toward fixing it. Because the problems are so deeply connected, our solutions simply cannot be isolated fixes. We require a unified, integrated approach. We need integrated policies that span from local city councils all the way to national governments. We must deploy sustainable technologies. Crucially, we need robust global cooperation. Ultimately, we just have to find a way to align our very human need for economic and societal development with strict, unwavering ecological balance. And to achieve that kind of global cooperation, international frameworks are absolutely essential. The Paris Agreement is a prime example of this. It acts as a critical stage for nations to come together, navigate those super complex equity debates between developed and developing nations we mentioned earlier, and negotiate the integrated global solutions necessary to tackle this massive, interconnected web of environmental degradation. So we've taken our camera lens all the way out, and now I want to snap it right back to where we started. If local pollution feeds the global crisis, then it stands to reason that local solutions can feed global healing, right? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. As you consider your own place within this giant, interconnected system, how will the choices you make locally, right in your own backyard, reshape the broader planetary web? The scales are all connected, which means your actions absolutely matter. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today.